I walked into my parents' living room and stopped cold. The air felt heavy, like something terrible was waiting to happen. My stepbrother Kalen sat at the dining table, papers spread out in front of him, pen in hand. My mother stood near the window with her arms crossed tight across her chest. My stepfather leaned against the wall like he was blocking an exit. They all turned to look at me at the same time, and my stomach twisted into a knot. Kalen signed the bottom of a document with a dramatic flourish, then slid it across the table toward my stepfather with a satisfied smile. That was the moment my mother cleared her throat and said the words that shattered everything I thought I knew. Mira, we've made a family decision about your grandmother's land. We're transferring ownership to Kalen. It's what's best for everyone involved. I opened my mouth to speak, but no sound came out. The land. The property my grandmother promised would be mine. The place she told me would always belong to me. Kalen leaned back in his chair with that infuriating smirk plastered across his face. You never knew how to use it anyway. My hands balled into fists at my sides. I looked at my mother, desperately waiting for her to say this was some kind of sick joke. She just stared back at me with cold eyes. I turned toward the door, my voice barely above a whisper. This isn't over. I returned the next morning demanding real answers, my heart pounding with anger and confusion. My mother sighed like I was being unreasonable and causing unnecessary drama. You're too emotional about this whole situation, Mira. You've never been business-minded like Kalen is. He understands investments and property management. My stepfather nodded along with everything she said. He needs this opportunity more than you do right now. You'll be perfectly fine without it. You've always been independent. I stared at both of them, feeling my chest tighten with frustration and hurt. They were trying to gaslight me into thinking I was crazy for being upset about this. Like my feelings didn't matter at all. Like I was the problem here. Grandma left that land specifically to me, I said firmly. She told me herself multiple times before she died. My mother waved her hand dismissively through the air. She was elderly, Mira. She didn't fully understand all the legal details and complications. But then I noticed something strange. A quick glance passed between my mother and stepfather. A brief flicker of panic crossed both their faces. They were definitely hiding something important from me. That night, I went through my grandmother's old wooden box of letters and documents that I'd stored in my closet. Buried at the very bottom beneath old photographs, I found it. A handwritten note on her personal stationery. This land belongs to Mira alone. No one else has any claim to it. My hands trembled as I read those words again and again. They had lied directly to my face. Every single one of them had lied. I walked back into that living room the following evening and slammed the letter down hard onto the table. My mother's face drained of all color instantly. My stepfather froze completely mid-sentence. Kalen glanced at the paper with a confused frown on his face. Where did you find that? My mother whispered, her voice shaking slightly. From Grandma's personal belongings. The same things you specifically told me to throw away last month. My stepfather straightened up tall, his voice becoming sharp and defensive. That letter isn't legally binding in any court, Mira. It's just sentimental words on paper. I stared directly at him without blinking. So you already knew about its existence. He didn't bother answering my question. Kalen folded his arms across his chest with that same smug expression. Doesn't change anything. The legal papers are already signed and filed. I felt my jaw clench tight with barely controlled anger. Then I'll hire a lawyer and take this to court. My mother's eyes went wide with obvious fear. She stepped forward quickly, her voice cracking with emotion. Mira, you don't understand what's really at stake here. There are things you don't know. I stopped moving and turned back. What do you mean by that? She looked nervously at my stepfather, then back at me. Her lips pressed together like she had already said too much. Just trust us on this. Please. But I didn't trust them. Not anymore. Not after everything they'd done. That night, Sleep wouldn't come no matter how hard I tried. I kept replaying my mother's strange words over and over in my mind. What's at stake? The next evening, I stayed completely silent in the dark hallway while my parents argued loudly in the kitchen. Their voices were low but extremely tense and angry. We had absolutely no choice in this matter, my stepfather hissed angrily. If we don't give him that land as collateral, we lose everything we've worked for. I know that, my mother said desperately. But Myra's going to find out the truth eventually. She won't discover anything if we stay firm and united on this. I pressed myself flat against the wall, my heart pounding so hard I thought they might hear it. Then my stepfather said something that made my blood run cold. Kaylin's gambling debts are buried deep in our joint accounts. If he doesn't use that land as collateral for his loans, the bank comes directly after us. My breath caught painfully in my throat. This wasn't about playing favorites with children. This was pure desperation and fear. They were covering up his massive mistakes and terrible choices. And they were completely willing to destroy my entire inheritance to save themselves from his consequences. I stepped out into the bright kitchen light. They both jumped backward in shock. You used me, I said quietly but firmly. My mother reached out toward me with shaking hands, but I pulled back away from her touch. Mira, please just listen. No, I interrupted. I'm not going to be your pawn anymore. Those days are finished. A few days later, Kaylin cornered me outside the house when no one else was around. He was completely alone, which was unusual for him. He leaned casually against his expensive car with that irritating grin. You're really going to make this difficult for everyone, aren't you? I crossed my arms defensively across my chest. You stole my inheritance. What did you expect? He laughed like this was all some amusing game. I didn't steal a single thing. They gave it to me freely. Because they know I'm the one who actually matters in this family. I felt my face flush hot with anger, but I forced myself to stay completely calm. You don't even genuinely care about that land at all. He shrugged carelessly. Not really, honestly. I already promised it to some guy I know through connections. Investor type with lots of money. He'll pay me enough to clear all my debts and then some extra. My stomach turned with disgust. He never actually wanted the property itself. He just wanted the power and control over me. He wanted to prove he could take something precious away from me. I pulled out my phone from my pocket, still recording everything in the background. Thanks for being so honest, Kaylin. His confident smile faltered noticeably. What do you mean? I walked away without saying another word. I had everything I needed now. The truth was finally recorded. I waited exactly 2 days before making my calculated move. Then I sent a simple text message to my parents. Let's sit down together and talk properly. I want to work this situation out peacefully. My mother called me immediately, relief flooding through her voice. Oh, Mira. Thank you so much. I knew you'd eventually understand our position. My stepfather quickly agreed to meet that upcoming weekend. When we all sat down in the living room again, they both looked noticeably lighter, like they genuinely thought I had given up fighting them. I pulled out my phone and set it carefully on the table between us. Before we start discussing anything, I want you both to hear something important. I pressed play on the recording. Kaylin's arrogant voice filled the entire room. I already promised it to some guy I know. Investor type. He'll pay me enough to clear my debts. My mother's face went completely white. My stepfather's jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles working. Where did you get that recording? He demanded angrily. From Kaylin directly. He's not very careful when he's bragging. My mother looked like she might actually cry. Mira, what do you want from us? I leaned forward slowly. I want to make a deal that benefits everyone. I let the heavy silence hang in the air for a long moment. Then I spoke very carefully and deliberately. I'll support your decision publicly about the land. I won't fight the transfer through lawyers. I won't cause any family problems or drama. My mother exhaled with obvious relief. Thank you so much, But, I interrupted firmly, I want complete and total control of the family's old manufacturing business in exchange. The room went absolutely still. My stepfather's face darkened considerably. The factory? Yes. The one that's been sitting empty and abandoned for years. The one that's still legally in my name. My mother shook her head vigorously. Mira, that place is completely worthless. It's falling apart and dangerous. Then it shouldn't matter at all if I take full ownership, I said evenly without emotion. My stepfather stood up abruptly. Why do you want that old building? I met his eyes directly without flinching. Because it's worth far more than you think it is. He stared at me hard, and I saw it clearly in his expression. Pure fear. They hadn't actually forgotten about the factory at all. They just hoped desperately that I had. Fine, my stepfather said finally through gritted teeth. Take it then. But his voice didn't sound even slightly relieved. Sounded completely trapped. I drove out to the abandoned factory early the next morning before the sun was fully up. It sat on the very edge of town, surrounded by empty fields and badly cracked pavement. The building itself was old and worn, covered in orange rust and peeling paint. But I wasn't looking at the building structure at all. I was looking at the valuable land underneath it. Inside, I found my stepfather's old office that hadn't been touched in years. The filing cabinets were still there, covered in thick dust and cobwebs. I pulled out drawer after drawer systematically until I found exactly what I needed. Zoning documents, detailed property surveys, mineral rights reports. My heart raced faster as I read through each page carefully. The land the factory sat on was zoned specifically for commercial redevelopment. High-demand commercial property. It could potentially be worth millions of dollars if developed correctly and strategically. And my parents knew this valuable information. There were detailed notes in my stepfather's distinctive handwriting. Multiple offers from eager developers. Complex plans that never went through for some reason. They had tried to sell it quietly under the table and failed. Now it was entirely mine. I took clear pictures of everything with my phone. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around quickly. A man in an expensive suit stood in the doorway watching me. The man stepped inside calmly, hands in his pockets. He was older, maybe 50 years old, with sharp, intelligent eyes. You must be Mira, he said knowingly. I stayed completely calm. Who are you exactly? Cade. I'm a property developer. I've been watching this particular property for years. He walked over to the dirty window, looking out at the empty lot. Your stepfather tried to sell this place to me 3 separate times. Each time, something fell through at the last minute. I crossed my arms. Why are you here now? He turned to face me directly. Because I heard you just took control of it. And I want to know if you're smarter than he was. I didn't blink. Smarter how? He smiled, but it wasn't warm or friendly. Your stepfather wanted fast money immediately. He didn't understand what he actually had here. This land could be a goldmine if you're patient and strategic. But it takes real guts. He stepped closer to me. Oh, are you ready to play the same game they played with you? I looked him straight in the eye. I'm ready to play it better. I registered an LLC the next week. Quietly and professionally. I didn't tell my parents anything about it. I worked with a lawyer in the next town over. Someone who didn't know my family or their reputation. The paperwork was clean. Legal. Completely airtight. But somehow my stepfather found out anyway. He showed up at my apartment unannounced, absolutely furious. What do you think you're doing? I stayed perfectly calm. Managing my property. You're just a kid, Mira. You don't know how to run a development project. Then it's a good thing I'm learning quickly. He stepped closer, his voice dropping low and threatening. If you push this, you'll regret it. I didn't flinch away from him. Is that a threat? He didn't answer. He just turned and left abruptly. That night I got a text message from Kaylin. Back off, or I'll ruin everything. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I smiled. Let him try. 3 nights later, my security system sent me an urgent alert. Motion detected at the factory. I pulled up the camera feed on my phone immediately. Kalen was there. He had a metal crowbar and a can of spray paint. He was trying to damage the building, probably to devalue the property significantly. I watched him smash a window completely. Watched him spray paint across the front wall. Then I called the police. By the time they arrived, I was already there waiting. Kalen was caught red-handed, still holding the crowbar. The officers took detailed statements, took photographs. Kalen glared at me with pure hatred from the back of the patrol car. But I didn't press charges. Not yet anyway. When my parents called, absolutely panicking, I told them I'd handle it privately. My stepfather arrived an hour later, pale and shaking. "What do you want?" he asked desperately. I looked at Kalen, then back at him. "You just gave me exactly what I needed." I called a family meeting the next day. My parents sat on one side of the table. I sat on the other. I pulled out my laptop and played the security footage. Kalen breaking the window. Kalen vandalizing the property. My mother covered her mouth in shock. My stepfather's face went red with anger. "If this footage gets out publicly," I said calmly, "you'll face serious legal trouble. Fraud. Conspiracy. Maybe worse charges." My mother's voice cracked. "Mira, please." "I won't release it," I said. "On one condition." My stepfather's jaw tightened. "What?" "You sign over all rights to the factory. Immediately. No restrictions. No conditions." He stared at me. I stared back without blinking. Finally, he pulled out his phone and called his lawyer. The papers were drawn up that same afternoon. I watched them both sign. My mother's hand shook. My stepfather wouldn't look at me. When it was done, I stood up. My mother looked at me, and her expression made my skin crawl. Not anger. Something colder. "You've changed," she whispered. I picked up the signed documents. "No. I just stopped pretending." My mother called me 2 days later, screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "You betrayed us. After everything we've done for you." I held the phone away, waiting patiently for her to finish. When she finally stopped, I said quietly, "You already cut me off. You just didn't tell me." She hung up immediately. My stepfather sent a single text message. "Don't come back to this house." I deleted it without responding. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it was my aunt. My grandmother's younger sister. "Mira, we need to talk. Can I come see you?" I hesitated for a moment. Then I agreed. She arrived that evening with a folder in her hands. "Your grandmother wanted you to have this," she said. "She told me to give it to you if anything ever felt wrong." I opened the folder carefully. Inside was a copy of my grandmother's will. The real one. My aunt sat beside me. "Your parents lied to you for years, Mira. Your grandmother wanted you to run that factory. Not just inherit it. Run it." My throat tightened. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" She looked down. "Because I didn't know they'd go this far." I paused. "There's one more thing you need to know." My aunt pulled out another document from her bag. A duplicate of my grandmother's full will. I read it slowly, my heart pounding harder with each line. The land. Factory. Both were supposed to go to me. Not split. Not negotiated. Mine completely. "They committed fraud," my aunt said softly. "They altered the reading of the will." I felt my hands shaking. "How?" "I don't know all the details. But your grandmother's lawyer might." She gave me his name and contact information. I contacted him the very next day. When we met, he looked tired. Guilty. "I've been waiting for you to reach out," he said. He slid a folder across the desk. "This is the original will. The one your parents told me to bury." Opened it. Every word confirmed what my aunt said. "Why did you keep it?" asked. He looked at me. "Because I knew one day you'd come looking. And I knew you'd need proof." I stared at the papers. This was bigger than I thought. This wasn't just about the land or the factory. This was theft. The lawyer leaned forward across his desk. I can help you reclaim everything legally. But it won't be easy at all. Your parents will fight this hard. I looked at him directly. I don't care how hard they fight. He nodded slowly. Then we start formal proceedings immediately. We challenge the land transfer. We void their fraudulent claims. And we expose what they did. I took a deep breath. Do it. He picked up his phone. I'll file the paperwork tomorrow morning. I left his office feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because I finally had proof. Heavier because I knew what was coming. That night I texted Kaylin. You can still walk away from this. He didn't respond. But my stepfather did. You're making a mistake, Mira. Type back. No. I'm fixing one. The lawsuit was filed 3 days later. My parents' lawyer called mine immediately, trying desperately to negotiate. But I wouldn't budge on anything. My mother showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door. You're destroying this family. Open the door. You destroyed it first. She stared at me, tears streaming down her face. How can you be so cruel? I felt my chest tighten, but I kept my voice steady. I'm not being cruel. I'm being honest. She turned and left. My stepfather didn't come. He sent emails instead. Long, angry messages about respect and family loyalty. I didn't respond to any of them. Then my mother did something I didn't expect. She posted online a long, emotional story about her ungrateful daughter, who turned her back on family. She painted me as selfish, greedy, cold. For a moment I felt the sting. Then the comments started rolling in. People asking questions, pointing out contradictions. And then someone leaked Kaylin's recordings. The ones where he bragged about selling the land. The tide turned fast. Within 2 days, the online post backfired completely. People who knew our family started sharing their own stories. How my parents always favored Kaylin. How they ignored me. How my grandmother used to talk about leaving me the land. My mother deleted the post hastily. But screenshots had already spread everywhere. My stepfather stayed silent. Kaylin, though, started falling apart. He stopped posting online. Stopped going out. I heard from a mutual friend that he was barely eating. Part of me felt bad. But the bigger part of me remembered how he smirked when they took my inheritance. Still, I didn't expect what happened next. Kaylin showed up at my door. His eyes were red. His voice shaky. Can we talk? I hesitated. Then I let him in. He sat on my couch, head in his hands. I didn't want this, he said. I just always felt like I didn't measure up. Like I'd never be good enough. So when they gave me the land, I thought maybe I finally mattered. I stayed quiet. He looked up at me. I'm sorry, Mira. I studied his face carefully. He looked broken. But I wasn't sure if it was real or just another manipulation. Do you want redemption or destruction? He asked. He blinked. What? Pick one, I said. Because you can't have both. Kaylin stared at me for a long moment without speaking. Then he wiped his face roughly. Redemption. I leaned back against the couch. Then prove it to me. He sat up straighter. How? Testify. Tell the truth about what Mom and Dad did. About the fraud. About the debts. He went pale. They'll never forgive me for that. They already used you, I said firmly. At least this way you take control of your own story. He was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. Okay. I'll do it. I didn't trust him completely yet. But I accepted his offer carefully. 2 days later he met with my lawyer downtown. And he told them everything honestly. Including something I didn't know before. They were planning to sell both properties, Kaylin said. The land and the factory. Within 6 months. They were going to take the money and disappear. My lawyer looked at me seriously. I felt my stomach drop hard. They were going to betray both of us. The revelation changed absolutely everything about the case. My lawyer contacted Kaylin's lawyer and coordinated his testimony carefully. Within a week, we had signed affidavits, recorded statements, evidence that my parents had committed not just inheritance fraud, but financial conspiracy. My stepfather's lawyer reached out, asking desperately to negotiate. I refused completely. My mother sent another message. Please, Mira. Let's talk face to face. I didn't respond at all. The case moved forward steadily. The original will was submitted. Kaylin's testimony was submitted. My grandmother's letter was submitted. It was airtight. Then my parents' lawyer called mine directly. They're willing to settle completely. Full restitution. No criminal charges filed. My lawyer looked at me seriously. What do you want to do? I thought about it carefully. I thought about my grandmother. About the years I spent believing I wasn't enough. I thought about the factory. The future I could build. I want to make them an offer, I said. I drafted the counteroffer myself with my lawyer's guidance. My parents would sign over 100% rights to the land and the factory. All assets connected to both properties. Full legal transfer without exception. No strings attached whatsoever. In exchange, I wouldn't pursue criminal charges against them. My lawyer delivered it personally. My parents had exactly 48 hours to respond. On the second day, my stepfather called me. His voice was flat and defeated. You're really doing this to us? Yes, I said simply. You'll destroy us financially. Pause. You destroyed me first emotionally. Silence hung heavy on the line. Then he hung up abruptly. An hour later, my lawyer called. They signed everything. I sat down, staring at the wall. It was over. I won. But when I hung up the phone, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. The final papers were signed in a lawyer's office downtown. My parents didn't look at me once. Kaylin sat in the corner, quiet and subdued. My mother's hand shook as she signed her name. My stepfather's face was stone. When it was done, my lawyer handed me the documents. It's all yours now. I nodded silently. My mother stood up slowly, her voice barely a whisper. I hope you're happy now. I looked at her directly. I'm not happy. But I'm free. They left without another word. Kaylin lingered behind. What happens to me now? Thought about it. You get a job. You rebuild your life. I'll help you find something stable. But you do the work yourself. He nodded. Thank you. I didn't respond. I just watched him leave. The office was quiet. I sat there for a long time, holding the papers tightly. My inheritance. My future. Finally mine. The factory redevelopment started 2 months later. I hired Cade as the lead developer. He was expensive, but he was excellent. Investors lined up once they saw the detailed plans. The old building was gutted completely and rebuilt into a modern commercial center. Retail spaces, offices, community areas. It was beautiful. Kaylin got a job with a local logistics company. He checked in every few weeks by text. He seemed different now. Calmer. More mature. My parents moved to another town entirely. I heard they were renting a small house there. They didn't contact me at all. I didn't contact them either. One afternoon, while sorting through my grandmother's things, I found another letter. This one was sealed with wax. My name was written on the front in her handwriting. I opened it carefully. The letter was dated exactly 1 year before she died. My dearest Mira, if you're reading this, it means you've had to fight for what I promised you. I'm so sorry for that. I wish I could have protected you from the ugliness that comes with family and money. But I always knew you were strong enough to handle it. You were never like the others. You never wanted things handed to you. You wanted to earn them honestly. That's why I chose you. Not because you were my favorite, but because I knew you'd use what I gave you to build something real. Something good. Break the cycle, Mira. Don't let their manipulation define you. You are not what they made you feel. You are who you choose to be. I'm proud of you. Always was. Love, Grandma. I read it 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my wallet. I carried it everywhere after that. A few weeks later, a journalist reached out via email. She wanted to write a feature about the factory redevelopment and the story behind it. I hesitated at first. But then I thought about all the people who stayed silent when they were wronged. All the people who let their families erase them completely. I agreed to the interview. The article came out a month later. It was honest and fair. It didn't shame my parents, but it didn't hide the truth either. Talked about inheritance fraud. About family manipulation. About standing up for yourself even when it costs you everything you know. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from people who'd experienced the same thing. People who felt invisible in their own families. People who were told they didn't deserve what was theirs. I realized I wasn't alone. And neither were they. My parents never responded publicly. But I heard they'd read it. I didn't care anymore. I'd said what I needed to say. I stood in front of the newly renovated commercial center on opening day. The building gleamed in the bright sunlight, modern and clean. People walked in and out constantly, exploring the shops and offices. Families, workers, dreamers. I thought about my grandmother. About the land she left me. About the factory she wanted me to run. I thought about my parents and the years they made me feel small and worthless. And I thought about who I'd become through all of this. Not bitter. Not broken. But strong. I pulled out my grandmother's letter and read the last line again. Strength isn't loud. It's steady. Smiled. Then I walked inside, ready to build the future I deserved. The past was finally behind me.